Passport retention is a legal violation that leaves a migrant worker vulnerable and more susceptible to becoming a victim of forced and banded labor. If passports or travel documents are stored by the employer, this can only be in exceptional circumstances and for reasons of safekeeping upon the request and with the consent of the worker, which should be genuine. An employer who withholds the passport can force their employees to perform tasks they would otherwise not agree to. If the worker chooses to leave without his or her passport, regardless if the employer forced him to work or not, he or she becomes undocumented and becomes vulnerable to forced labor by other employers as well. So even without subjecting the worker to forced labor, through passport retention, an employer is creating the conditions for forced labor.
TFT's work in Malaysia focuses on the palm oil industry where our member companies operate or source from. We work in their supply chains to help implement their no deforestation, no peat and no exploitation policies, which are important values for their businesses. These policies are also increasingly becoming a market requirement. Over the years, we gained a deep understanding of the social and environmental challenges in the different categories of the supply chain. This understanding is now allowing us and our members to drive positive transformation on key issues that stand in the way of sustainability or their NDP policies. TFT's transformation strategy is hinged on addressing the issue of labour shortage, which is a concern for employers. Our approach is to demonstrate that return of passports to the workers are an important part of ensuring workers' freedom of movement, improving employer-employee relations, and increasing the likelihood of workers' motivation to stay with the same employer. We also want to dispel the belief that passport retention prevents worker abscondment, because it is not true. We want to show employers the need for workers to be made aware of their rights and administrative responsibilities relating to their passports. Firstly, employers typically spend huge amounts of money for recruiting migrant workers, covering a range of fees in both the receiving and sending country. Hence, there is a common tendency of needing to protect their investment and avoiding the need to rehire and spend for recruitment fees again. Retaining passports is one example. We understand the challenges for companies in the current regulatory environment, but we also stress on the importance of free and fair employment. In our work, when we engage a plantation or a mill, together with our member, we emphasize that passports are the personal property of workers and the employer has no right to restrict access to it. Secondly, we have found that there is a lack of understanding about the law and how passport retention is linked to forced labor. That is why we have focused on raising awareness of the subject. Of course, this can take time and sometimes requires multiple engagements with the company. During these engagements, we show examples of good practices. We show how other companies have seized passport retention and provided secure facilities for workers to keep their own passports safe and accessible. There are other underlying issues that we assess, such as security issues in the area for consideration, or whether the workers have a safe place to keep their belongings. There are many practices that can indicate a situation of forced labor. Passport retention is one that most companies have never considered in this light. However, once awareness is raised amongst companies through different forms of interactions, resource provision, and other engagements, we believe implementation will follow, especially with pressure coming from the market. We have seen this happening with several companies over the past few years. TFT is trying to find practical ways forward on areas that we know we can drive transformation, and with that, build a momentum for an industry to be exploitation-free.